So, a lot of people ask me about anterior pelvic tilt. It is so damn rare, incredibly rare. Here's a bit of news for you. If you got a disc bulge, you didn't get it from anterior pelvic tilt. So, what about this anterior pelvic tilt basic myth? Okay, it's occasionally there, but remember, if you have a disc bulge, you didn't get it from anterior pelvic tilt because it's impossible. Okay, here's a normal spine, and this spine has this normal lordosis curve, and there's the pelvis, basically the sacrum. This spine is in a perfect position. Now, if we have anterior pelvic tilt, that means the spine goes into extension. Posterior pelvic tilt puts the spine into flexion. Here's a piece of spine for you. Posterior pelvic tilt does that. That's posterior pelvic tilt. If you've got anterior pelvic tilt, you don't bulge it. Anterior pelvic tilt will close down the facet joints. Now, most people who come to me have disc injuries and bulges and protrusions and various sorts of mechanical injuries that have only occurred from posterior pelvic tilt. You may even say butt winking. So when you're squatting and your butt winks, that goes into posterior pelvic tilt. So if you've hurt your back when you've been squatting, usually you'll find it's got a relationship to posterior pelvic tilting. If you sit down and you slump, you'll be in posterior pelvic tilt. I know there was an old article written many years ago that suggested that anterior pelvic tilt had some relationship to sitting. Very super rarely would I see that. If you look around you and the people around you and how they sit, it's a C shape, a big curve, not an S shape, which you would have with anterior pelvic tilt. So, anterior pelvic tilt, it's rare, but of course it can exist. But most people, it's posterior pelvic tilt, poor posture, butt winking, spinal flexion, which produces your lower back problems. Too many people who do not have education and do not understand spines go around telling people that they have anterior pelvic tilt. Okay, stick a fork in it, it's done. Let's not talk about that. It's super rare and you need to see a very good professional who would diagnose that situation for you. Most of you, at least 99% of you, with your back issues is due to posterior pelvic tilting, is due to lumbar flexing way too often, is due to weak glutes, poor hip extension and lazy abs. Don't blame it on anterior pelvic tilt. It's like blaming things on the unicorn and the tooth fairy, okay? Not really.